We talked a lot about it on Friday's show, KC. Some of the matchups here didn't seem favorable. Even the matchups that weren't favorable turned out to be favorable as the Eagles just dismantle the Broncos. Give me something that surprised you about how easy it was for Philly yesterday.
I tell you, well, the thing that stood out the most when I broke down the tape was Philadelphia's defensive line. We know they're pretty good, and Denver's offensive line has been terrible at running the ball, but Philadelphia only allowed a 10% good blocking rate, which is how often they let the Denver blockers give their running backs good blocking. 10% is an incredibly low number. It's the lowest that Denver's posted this season. It's the best showing by the Eagles, and Denver kept going to it. Usually if you see a team post like a good blocking rate that low, it's because they only ran the ball 10 times or something. Denver kept going to the run, and the Eagles just kept obliterating them. I figured they'd win, but just not by that much.
Yeah, obviously, Ajayi yesterday, 8 carries, 77 yards. He had the 46-yarder. So they had that. Clement had a great day yesterday, too. They gave him – he actually led the team in carries with 12. You had Blunt doing his thing. Even Smallwood had 5 carries for 25 yards. So he's, ripping off. The funny part is he had 5 carries for 25 yards. His log was 26. So he actually somehow lost the yards on the rest of his carries. But, they just ran the ball. But they also were able to throw the ball. The play to Jeffrey on the first touchdown, just a real good play design there.
Yeah, it's a terrific design. Well, it was what would you call it? It's a triple option that you can hand it, you can pitch it, or you can throw it. There's 3 different things, and I guess the Broncos just did not expect the throw, and so you're adding another element into that type of play. It makes, if you can operate that effectively all the time, that's going to make it impossible to stop if you get to try and stop all 3 of those things.
Great throw too. The throw by Wentz. Let's look at his game yesterday, and really. His factor into why this team is 8-1. He was 15 of 27. He didn't even throw for 200 yards yesterday, but 4 more touchdowns. Just kind of go over his game yesterday and why he has been so important for them to be 8-1.
I was surprised when I looked at the vertical metrics that he was only 5 out of 13 on vertical passes for 7.9 yards per attempt. Those aren't great numbers, and yet he still hits the big plays, which is incredible. The thing that stood out to me most about the Eagles' offense, as good as he played, the thing that stood out to me is they allowed pass rush pressure on only 19.4% of plays yesterday. It was the 5th best total in Week 9, and you're doing that against Denver's defense. Denver's defense hasn't been getting a great pass rush of late, but they're still, this is still an above-average passing team talent-wise, and the Eagles completely shut down their pass rush. We've talked about how that's been a problem for the last few weeks. If they can do it against Denver, they can do it against most teams, and if that's the case, this team is scary.
One thing is I thought they game planned. They really used the aggression or the over-aggression of Von Miller into their favor. They seemed like they were game planning to go right after him.
Yeah, they did. And Philadelphia, we talked last week also about how Denver's been fantastic at stopping the run. You can look at almost all their metrics, and they're very good at that. But the one that stood out to me the most was that they're second in good blocking rate allowed. You're not going to get many good blocking carries. And I figured, okay, the Eagles maybe won't get as many good blocking carries today, but they'll get some breakaway runs. Well, they get the breakaway runs. They touched them by Ajayi being the biggest on that list. But they got good blocking for their ball carriers 51.4% of the time. That's an incredible number. If you're above, if 41's the average, if you're in the 50s, you've had a fantastic game. And they did that against one of the best run defenses in the league. So that offensive line just, like you said, I think they used Denver's aggression against them, and they did that in part because they could just pound the ball down the throat.
What did you see from the offensive line of Philly and why they were so successful yesterday?
I think because one, they were committing to the running game, and 2, again, you've got all those backs back there. You've got fresh backs in there all the time, and we talked last week about that they could do different things in different roles. I still don't know they have Ajayi's role defined. He was just coming in there, seemed as a change of pace back, but now you've got everybody being able to do what they do well, so you can put them into schemes, and you don't have to ask. You don't have to ask Smallwood to try and be a grinded out back. You don't have to ask him to do that. You can have Clement do what he does. You can have Ajayi be your grinding out back. You can Blunt do what he does. So I think between all those things, it's allowing Philadelphia to have a lot of diversity in the running game. It makes them really hard to stop.
Hey, KC Joyner is with us. You called it on Friday. You said they're terrible defending the tight end. They didn't even have to defend Ertz, and yet they still had problems with Burton and Selleck. And how big of it? What does it say about Philly to go 51 without Ertz?
Exactly. Without the and that would have been a huge mismatch. That shows you how Denver's got some problems defensively. I mean, they've had Simmons out there, and he's just not good enough to cover, and they've not been able to game plan around that. I'm kind of surprised that Denver hasn't said more often that we're going to shift some of our other people over. You know, we're going to try and move some of our corners over. Maybe we'll play Roby on the outside and move somebody to play against the tight end. Do something to put that higher on the list, because it just seems like they're trying to go head up and thinking we've got the talent, and they don't. But Philadelphia can do that well again with a backup tight end. But that shows you the depth they have at tight end too. That's one thing that's kind of maybe overlooked about Philadelphia, is that they've got so much depth at so many positions that if they do start getting hurt, which they haven't yet, but if they do, they should be able to absorb some of the injuries.
Yeah, you know, I thought it was interesting. When they announced that Ertz was out, I was interested to see what they were going to do. Go with Burton, the pass-catching guy, or use Selleck to help out on Von Miller more, to figure out who was going to get more snaps in that instance. But it kind of seems like they went with Burton early. They kind of used Selleck here and there. So they do have depth at the tight end position. They also have depth at wideout, where you saw Jeffrey 6 for 84. You saw Aguilar catch the ball there too. So very balanced on the offense. But Casey, let's flip over to the Eagle defense here, where they had 3 sacks. They pressured Osweiler all day, who was awful. I mean, he was awful yesterday. But this is another thing that's very, I guess, under the radar about the Philly defense is, I think one of the reasons they're 8-1 is because they tackle. You don't see a lot of teams that tackle in the NFL. They tackle you, and that's a big difference and a big change from where they were a couple of years ago, even last year, where we would come in here and talk all the time. That missed tackle led to a big play, or they couldn't tackle the secondary. They tackle in that secondary, and it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, they tackle in the secondary very well. That team, they a lot. You're right. A lot of teams in the NFL, it's been a problem for many years. The teams just don't teach tackling the same way. I think the Eagles emphasize that. By the way, the Eagles pass rush too, though. Good night. They got pass rush pressure on 48.8% of dropbacks. It's the highest total week 9 through the Sunday games. Almost half the time when Osweiler's dropping back, the Eagles are getting some form of pass rush pressure. And it's not like they were going full out blitz to do it. I mean, they blitzed some, but they didn't blitz a ton. And it just says that. And again, some of that's Denver's offensive line. It might be, if it's not the worst in the league, it's in the bottom 5. But that means you're supposed to be able to dominate groups like that, and the Eagles absolutely did so. And that's a great sign.
I know we talked about Ajayi on Friday's show about you said it was the Dolphins blocking, not him. Did anything happen yesterday to make you change your mind on that? Because his one carry, he kind of showed what he can add to this offense.
We talked about him being a breakaway back, that last year he ranked in the top 5 in my good blocking yards per attempt category that measures production when you get good blocking. It was one of only 5 backs to average 10 or more yards. That's kind of like the elite bar. What he showed on that run yesterday, that touchdown run, that's what he can do when you give him good blocking. And that's really something that the Eagles didn't have in their backfield. And I think that's why they made the trade, because Blunt has had some breakaway runs in the past. He's done well in good blocking yards per attempt before, but he's not done, that's not what you want him to do on this team. And Smallwood and Clement, that's not what they're going to do either. They've got some burst, but not the kind of burst that Ajayi has. And that's the thing. You can put Ajayi out there if you wear the defense down and you put him out there for 10 or 15 carries. If you decide you want to rotate backs and just use him in that way, he could be your home run back in the second half of the game, and that's going to be a huge plus for them.
Well, what's Darby going to add?
He's going to just depth for one, but for two, they have. I wouldn't go so far as to call him a shutdown corner, but he's pretty darn close. But when you look at who they had yesterday, they had Mills out there for 64 snaps, Robinson out there for 80 snaps, Douglas out there for 58% of snaps. I should say 100% for Mills, 80 for Robinson, and 58 for Douglas. Can you imagine now you're moving Douglas down to your 4th cornerback? That's pretty good depth. If he's your 4 quarterback and you've got those, the 3 in front of him, that's really good. I mean, that's depth that can match up with the Steelers for being the deepest secondary in the league. So I think it could be another instance where now you've added Ajayi, you've added him, you're adding even more depth to a team and again, team that's not that injured right now.
Which is interesting because coming into the season, we figured that their secondary was the weak spot. I mean, that they were going to have problems. The fact that they had a trade for Darby to try to get to be an average secondary.
Yeah, they have. I mean, Mills has stepped up. And, again, I think that Mills, they still like him being their ball hawk. And Darby, that's ideally what they like to do. Philly has shown over the years that they like to have one ball hawk on one side of the field as a cornerback and another shutdown cornerback or something close to that. So you stay away from the shutdown guy, you throw targets over the other side, And the thing is, Mills is not giving up that many big plays, and he's making, he's getting ball hawk opportunities. So I think that Darby being there is going to allow them to shift to a type of defense they want to play.
All right, let's go around the league real quick, get some quick hits from KC Joyner from ESPN.com. His thoughts on the repercussions of these Week 9 games. You got Tennessee beating the Ravens there. Titans are now 5-3. Are they the favorite in the South?
They should be. I still think Jacksonville's got some problems stopping the runs, covering tight ends, and they've got Blake Bortles as their quarterback. I think Jacksonville's a nice story, but I think Tennessee's got a better team. They win that division.
Saints running away from Tampa Bay. Tampa's got all sorts of issues, but the Saints now, we got to start looking at them differently. They're playing defense.
Yep, and they're playing defense, and they've got the kind of running game that allows them to play defense. They've got the same formula as the Cowboys, and they got a better quarterback, or at least as good of a quarterback. So I think, in fact, I'd say they have a better quarterback. If they can keep doing this formula, they're a Super Bowl contender.
Coin flip on who played better, the Rams or the Eagles, but the Rams had to go across the country to do it. They smoked the Giants yesterday. They put up a 50-burger.
They did, and the thing is that it says something about how bad the Giants are, but it shows you that Jared Goff, people are not talking about him being as good as he is. He's probably a step behind Wentz, but not by very much. That guy is a really good quarterback, and they've got some talent on that club. Imagine they start really getting Sammy Watkins integrated into that offense.
That South matchup between the Falcons and the Panthers. Panthers win. Falcons don't know what their issues are. They're still 4-4. They're hanging around, but the Panthers win again, 6-3.
Yeah, Steve Sarkisian's just too basic of a play caller. It's not just that he's a step back from Shanahan. He's just too basic. And the Panthers keep winning despite, frankly, not playing that well a lot. Their offensive line's playing better now, but that team is I think that team's limited, but I think they're going to be a playoff team. And if they get that far and Newton starts to play well late in the season, who knows?
Jags 23, Bengals 7. KC, you just talked about the Jags defense, but their defense is why they're 5-3 right now.
And they can pass rush well. They can cover well. I still don't trust their run defense. They don't cover the tight end well. I still think they've got some weaknesses. And I still want to see, Bortles has had a couple of good games, but there's too many nightmare scenarios in recent history where he throws a lot of passes in the coverage. I think he's going to be the weakness down the road. But as long as they play teams of the caliber of the Bengals, they still win.
And by the way, they did that without Fournette, who was suspended just at the inactives yesterday. That was breaking news. So good win by Jacksonville. Texans and Colts, nothing stands out about either of these two teams now with Watson being out. It's a shame for Houston because them losing Watson really took them out of the race. Yeah, it did. And mind you, Savage, I think it can be a solid fill-in. But, I think you could sense yesterday that team was deflated emotionally by the fact that they've lost Watson, not just by his talents, but they're deflated emotionally. And if that's the case, that could be a long season. Hey, big day for Adrian Peterson. He kept the Cardinals, I guess, relevant for at least another week. Yeah, and again, hey, you can get that many carries. It doesn't look like Johnson's coming back, though. I thought for a minute that it was going to be Peterson going to fill in until Johnson comes back. He might not be back this year. If that's the case, you can't be running Peterson 37 times a game the rest of the season, so they got to figure something else out. Hey, guess what? A lot of people said he was shot, done. He had 37 carries. He kept himself going. What do you have, 130-plus yards yesterday? So that's 2 games for him, up over 130. With Arizona. How about a big win for Kirk Cousins and the Redskins? If you were to pick one team to lose, you could have said Washington going to Seattle. No way. Yeah, I would have expected because Washington just has so many injuries. I think Seattle's not nearly as good as people think. But when you're losing Reed and you've got all the injuries they have on the offensive line, and there's a lot of talent missing from that Washington offense, and they could still go on the road. But I think it says something about Seattle too that they've got some limitations, and I think they're gonna make the playoffs, but I think it's gonna be. I don't think they go very far, one and done. Cowboys have won 3 in a row. Balanced offense. They run the ball. Prescott's playing. At a great, he should possibly be in the MVP conversation too. And if they beat the Eagles a couple times, maybe he overtakes Wentz in that conversation. But what has happened with the Chiefs? They can't run the ball anymore. And the Chiefs, I did a whole article on ESPN's Insider section, or actually ESPN's fantasy section. It's in front of the paywall. Talks about what's happened with Kareem Hunt and what's happened with the Chiefs blocking in general. Problem for the Chiefs is their blocking, their pass block, their run blocking is still good. Their pass blocking stinks. Their run defense is terrible. They can't rush the passer. The weaknesses that they were able to mask early in the season are coming to the fore, and I think it's going to keep showing up the rest of the year. I think that's the team on the decline. And obviously Dallas, they're going to play Philly in 2 weeks after the bye week here. Those two teams on a collision course. Are they the 2 best teams in the NFC? They are, but we've talked many times in the past that the Eagles were a team that didn't have Plan B if Plan A didn't work.
I think that they have plan A, plan B, and plan C. I think Dallas right now is still a formula team. They've got to have play a certain type of game to win, and I think when they play Philadelphia, that's going to show up.
Okay, Raiders and Dolphins, both these teams still alive in the AFC wildcard race, but are either one of them legit contenders?
I think the Raiders could be, because they've got, if they get their secondary healthy again, they're missing a couple of cornerbacks. They've had some other issues in their secondary. They get healthy in their secondary, and their offensive line keeps playing like it is. I think they could be a contender. The Dolphins, they lack talent. Their offensive line is terrible. And Jay Cutler, I don't care how good of a game he played yesterday, he's still way too limiting. I think that they're done.
Tonight you got Lions and Packers. A couple thoughts on this one. I mean, the Lions, they got Stafford. They've got to be the best quarterback in that division with Trubisky and Hundley and who's the other guy in that division? Who else am I forgetting in the north there?
Bradford.
Keenum. Yeah, Bradford / Keenum. Yep, the Minnesota. So Stafford's got to be the best quarterback in that division, but can he go on the road and win at Lambeau against a Hundley-led Packers?
That's the thing. If you're the Lions, they keep talking about how the Lions are a different team now, and how the Lions, this is they're going to be taking a step forward. You have to be able to go on the road and beat the Packers without Rodgers. If you can't do that now, if I'm them, I just say that this is, I don't want to say it's the end of the season, but they can't do it. And guys, nothing new is they're in Detroit. So I think they're going to win, but if they don't, I think it says a lot about what Caldwell on that team.
Okay, KC Joyner, ESPN.com, NFL Insider. He'll be back on Friday to look ahead to all the Week 10 games, which is we're getting now into the double-digit portion of the season. I don't like that at all. As we flip to November, Eagles have the bye, and, of course, you can listen to that Friday at 5 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, Casey, I told you Friday I did see the Ric Flair 30 for 30. I did get the advanced copy of that. It will be well worth your time, so make sure you're in front of the television tomorrow night.
We absolutely will. I've seen clips of it and things. It looks fantastic. It looks like a must-see show.
It is. It is very, very good. I watched it Saturday night from start to finish. It was awesome, so you will enjoy it, my friend, and we will talk a little bit about it on Friday's show. Thanks, pal.
Sounds like a plan.